Hey, it's Kevin back with another episode of the video blog. We're up to episode number, I believe it's 34. This one is, I guess, another trip down memory lane. I didn't realize it was a trip down memory lane until I thought a little bit about it. For years, whether it was when I was on the radio or in my time in the music business, I've always told people I feel that everybody's musical taste is really cemented between the ages of 16 and 21, 22 years old, sometimes up to 23, basically through your high school and college years. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact is you don't have a lot of outside expenses. You don't worry about the rent. You don't worry about a lot of things. You don't worry about a lot of real world expenses. I know I can harken back to when I was 16, 17, up to 21 years old, and yeah, I worked. I worked a couple of jobs. I worked in a jean store for years. I worked construction. I worked in radio. I worked a lot of hours and then squeezed a lot of free time or a lot of personal time into the rest of the hours, and there wasn't a lot of sleep during those years. And the reason I thought about this again was, well, I got pretty excited about a week or so ago, when I heard an album was coming out by one of the bands that influenced my life. Now, again, I'm sitting in Nashville, Tennessee, and I work in the country music industry for the most part, and I got excited and had to run to the record store to pick up an album by The Clash. The Clash live at Shea Stadium from October, I believe it's 12th or 13th of 1982. Because I remember seeing The Clash and traveling, 5-6 hours, driving in a car that shouldn't have driven that far to see them with a bunch of people in tow. I drove from my college at Radford, Virginia, to William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia, about a 5-hour drive near where I grew up in Virginia Beach, and literally drove from the university to William and Mary, went and watched the show, and then turned around and drove back and got back, in the middle of the night, that kind of thing. And when you're young, you can do those kind of things. But when I threw the CD, and yes, CD, which there aren't many CDs in my office anymore, I do a lot of things digitally. For some reason, I felt the need to have the CD copy of it. And when I started listening, and this is actually a recording of The Clash opening up a show for The Who at Shea Stadium. And it took me back in time. And I said, well, I wonder how close to the time they performed those shows was my William and Mary show. And thank goodness for the internet. You look it up and you find out that 2 to 3 nights later, depending upon when that show was actually recorded, they played 2 nights with The Who at Shea Stadium, October 12th and October 13th. And then 2 nights later, on October 15th, they were at William and Mary. And somewhere in my collection of T-shirts that are way too small that actually I know my wife can fit into now is my Clash tour T-shirt from '82. And it gets me to thinking that no matter, as long as I'm in country music and I love country music, still those groups that influenced me from the time I was a teenager, from groups like Foreigner and Cheap Trick on the rock side, to the top 40 sounds of people like Paul McCartney and Wings, to even early rap. A big fan of the early rap. Everything from the Furious Five to Grandmaster Flash to early Run DMC. A huge fan of that. To The Clash, to Billy Idol, to Duran Duran, to Devo. It takes me back in time. And I can just put that album on and just listen to it repeatedly after repeatedly and just sing along with every song. Because we really are influenced by the music of our youth. Music is still special and very important to me. But I always seem to keep going back to those songs from that era. Those songs that influenced my life. Think about it. Think of the bands that are your favorite bands of all times. And think of how old you were when you were buying those albums, or cassettes, or CDs, or whatever it was. I'm going to go back and spend some more time with The Clash. Because while it wasn't a great time in my life, it takes me back to a much younger, skinnier, and a guy who thought he was going to rule the world. Okay. Flash forward 2016, what is it, 20, it is 26 years later. I was hoping it wasn't that long. It takes you back.